use people's voices to highlight why they care about these things and connect those values to concrete pieces of the permit. We created a rubric, which we'll go into more. So we wanted your community to know how well you did, and we felt like this was an added benefit to that. We saw your deputy mayor, Cynthia Pratt, she tweeted about it. We saw a few of your community members highlight that they're very proud of that. That was the goal, was to create something accessible for your public, and we've seen them take action, not only to celebrate those who did amazing work, like the city of Lacey, but those who maybe need to step up a little bit more. So to create something that is accountable in an objective way, we used Ecology's own guidance. They created a manual for how to update codes, and we found 5 things in particular that we thought the public would care most about and was accessible to them, and we transformed them into some simplified language with a lot of visuals. So the 5 things we were looking for in particular with everyone's code, the first was softening your footprint. So this is the idea that you should have a maximum impervious surface limit for any sort of development, or at least multiple types of development. The second is building with care. This is about when you're in the most vulnerable time for your piece of land, when you're developing it, you're protecting those natural processes in play. Improving filtration. This is about, do you guys support permeable surfaces? The technology's there. It's a great stormwater function, and we see it around here. And growing the right trees. This is simple, but it's actually really critical, and I was sad to see some cities and counties not have this. An explicit tree list. What are the right trees for your community? The public needs to know this, developers need to know this, it needs to be explicit. Your staff, I'm sure, knows this well. Everyone should know it. And the last one is maintaining buffers. This is all about our critical areas. And are your critical areas explicitly protecting and enhancing using native plants and trees?
So we want to share some examples from the City of Lacey's code. I apologize, Danielle and I get excited about this, so sorry if the rest of you don't as much. But just so everyone knows, Lacey did get 5 out of 5 check marks, so had all of the things that we thought were really imperative within their code. For softening our footprint, Lacey has max impervious surface in mixed use high density zones. So as Danielle said, this is important to reduce the amount of hard surface on lots, which allows for infiltration on those lots.
For your building with care, you have requirements around soil stability, erosion control, protection of roots, timing, tree tract requirements, all that help preserve those systems already in place during construction that soak up rainwater. That was very extensive, actually fairly unique for a city and county.
In the City of Lacey, permeable surfacing is the preferred surface for sidewalks, parking, porches, stoops, and terraces. So this is surfacing that's going to, instead of run right off collecting pollutants as it does into creeks and into the sound, it is going to soak into that surfacing and be able to recharge the groundwater, prevent flooding, the things like that I was talking about earlier.
For your 4th check mark, you have a tree list. I mean, it seems like an easy thing to do, but not everyone has it. Yours is great.
And then finally, for maintaining buffers, Lacey has requirements that buffers consist of native vegetation, and that any buffer alteration has to also include enhancement of that buffer. So that is that preservation of native vegetation that's vital for allowing for infiltration. So we're thrilled to say that Lacey got a Green Star designation. As we said before, not a lot of cities in the Puget Sound region did. Lacey had a very transparent process. There was an interdepartmental effort that occurred. It was a thoughtful approach, and you showed really strong leadership. So thank you to the council for supporting that. Also, thank you to the staff for doing such amazing work. We also want to encourage any community members to thank their staff, so it's not just Danielle and I doing it.
And yeah, again, we've created a good tool for your community to understand the great work you're doing and be able to compare how you guys are doing great work maybe ahead of some of your other cities and counties. We have a physical award for you too. Oh, wow. I don't know who gets it. I'm guessing the mayor gets it. Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you guys for your time, for allowing us to present. We care greatly about this, and it was exciting to see this in action.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. you so much.
If anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer any, or our emails are also available on Nature Scorecard or on the website naturescorecard.com, which also goes much further into the information than on the handout that we provided. So please check it out. And congratulations.
So I do have a quick question.
Sure.
My assumption is we can make sure that people know that we have a green star, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Please
good.
do.
Okay,
Well,
thanks.
if we can get the photo, we'll post that to our social media as well, and we'll put it up on the website, because the idea is this scorecard is a living document for the next year. While you guys are, you got your checks, we're hoping others get inspired and add some of their checks. Yeah,
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Scott?
Thank you very much for giving this presentation, and I'd just like to repeat what they said. This was a partnering effort between Community and Economic Development and Public Works, and I'd like to recognize Samara Seymour from Community and Economic Development and Doug Christensen from Public Works as being the two leads on this project. There were a lot of people involved, but they were the ones that did the heavy lifting, and it was pretty much a 2-year process and a lot of work. A lot of stakeholders were involved, and I think they definitely deserve recognition. So thank you for presenting this.
I just want to emphasize that that's such a critical point, is that interdisciplinary work. I mean, you're not going to get true transformation and true code development unless every team's working together, because stormwater is a problem that happens everywhere, right, and crosses departments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really proud of Lacey's efforts when it comes to our environmental stewardship and this low-impact development. I know we're a very early adopter for low-impact development, and sometimes we don't always get the credit. So thank you so much for coming and giving this presentation. So next up is public comments on items not on the agenda, and we have one person who's signed up. Former Mayor Virgil Clarkson, you would like to come and...
You didn't want me to hear too much. Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, I'm Virgil Clarkson. I reside at 1505 Holman Drive, Southeast, Lacey, 98503. And my purpose for being here tonight is that this is sort of a carryover from the last 8-10 years that the Senior Services has a luncheon every year, and I felt it was my responsibility to bring it to this council's attention and staff and anybody else who may be listening that this opportunity to assist senior services to eat regularly and provide us additional funds to participate in the Meals on Wheels program in particular. This year is going to be a little stressful for us because of the budget that hasn't been approved yet at the national level, but we've already been notified that there will be less money. But in one regard, there's less money, but in another regard, there's more money, but it's got to be carried on a different ledger. So it's a mess. But I'm sorry that we, the council, has not produced the flyers yet, but I figured I'd better get here this week because she's not going to be here next week. And I want to think about this particular activity next month, that you will put it on your calendar, and I will make sure that you get a copy of the brochure or flyer so that you will have some confirmation as to when it is and where it is. And it's going to be at the RL, Red Lion, or Greenwood. I'm not sure what the name of it is now, but the hotel on the west side. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you for permitting me to do this, and I'll be doing this at all other jurisdictions with the exception of Tumwater because they have their own. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them because I don't have all the answers. Do you have a date?
Yeah, that's mine.
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't, but that'll be on the flyer.
Great.
Any other questions? Thank you.
As soon
Thank you very much.
as soon as we get it, we'll, I'm sure, be on the calendar, and it's always great to see you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. And staff is invited too. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to address this council on any items not on the agenda? Seeing none. Next up on our agenda is our Child Abuse Prevention Month proclamation. I think council has copies.
Alrighty.
Carolyn?
City of Lacey official proclamation. Whereas the City of Lacey recognizes our future rests in the hands of our most vulnerable and cherished assets, our children, and
whereas all children deserve to live in safe, stable, and nurturing environments which promote their healthy growth and development, and
whereas child abuse, neglect, and other adverse childhood experiences are recognized as serious public health problems affecting both the current and future quality of life in our community, and
whereas it is the responsibility of our community to ensure parents, caregivers, and other adults who influence the health and well-being of children have the support, knowledge, and concrete resources necessary to ensure all children thrive to their greatest potential, and
whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeeded because of partnerships among agencies, schools, religious organizations, law enforcement agencies, healthcare providers, and the business community, and
whereas we, as Lacey residents, continue our commitment to protecting all members of our community and call upon all citizens to join together to increase public safety and prevent the further abuse and neglect of our children.
Now, therefore, I, Mayor Andy Ryder, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month and urge all City of Lacey citizens, communities, state agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, medical providers, educators, and businesses to increase their participation in efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the community in which we live. Signed, my name, Mayor Andy Ryder, March 22nd, 2018. Is Lynn here to accept it? Please.
Nice, thank you.
We have a photo up.
Proclamation this way, I guess.
Go ahead, say a few words.
Oh, yeah. I'm Bob Partlow, and I'm a board member of Family Education and Support Services. And we are as passionate about child abuse and neglect as those two great young women were that were here about their issues. And congratulations to Lacey for the fine work they're doing in that effort. We very much appreciate your shining a spotlight on the issue of child abuse and neglect. It is, it's a cliche, of course, that the first part of solving a problem is recognizing you have one. And this helps recognize for your citizens and others who might see this that we have a huge problem. There are millions of lives around the world that can testify to the fact that child abuse and neglect is a very, very serious issue. And we work hard in Family Education and Support Services, along with many, many other people, including people within the City of Lacey, to combat that, to vet programs, to increase parenting skills, things like that. So we're grateful, and I would leave you with the words of James Baldwin, who was an author, and he said, "For these are all our children, and we will profit by or pay for whatever they become." So we need to take that to our hearts and say, we own this. We own their future. And I appreciate all that you're doing to help make that happen. And so thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
One quick note, if anyone is available.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Heather Antonitis. I work for Family Education and Support Services doing development. But just an invitation, on the 31st of this month of March, we will be planting pinwheels. So if you ever wondered why there are pinwheels all over the Capitol lawn, we plant them in recognition of April as Child Abuse Awareness Month. And so if the City of Lacey is interested in planting pinwheels, please let us know and we'll get you pinwheels as well. But 2 o'clock on the 31st is a Saturday, and we'll be planting pinwheels at the Capitol lawn. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So next up on our agenda is resolutions. We have a resolution for the Lacey Crossroads Development Agreement. Rick?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As you're aware, you've been reviewing and took action on the requested amendments to the Lacey Crossroads Development Agreement. Just for a real quick backstory or history, the applicants, ECP Collegeway LLC, owns several properties within the Lacey Crossroads Commercial Center. That commercial center was established back in 2007 under a development agreement between the previous property owner and the city for development of that area, types of uses, and design. The current property owner had requested to amend that development agreement, and primarily looking at three factors. One was the updating the allowed uses to reflect the current zoning that was adopted in the 2016 comprehensive plan update. That current zoning would be office commercial, so it would change from business park to office commercial type uses, and then also allow the full range of uses under the community commercial designation, which was part of that original development agreement. The second item is to provide some more flexibility specifically on Pad E in terms of site design to still balance the need for maintaining the plaza and pedestrian orientation, but also to provide driveway access or drive-through lane for a potential tenant that's not identified yet, but in terms of their marketing efforts. And then the third item was a city request is trying to provide, there's three other lots not owned by this particular applicant in the center, and the city wanted to make sure there was the same opportunity provided for those property owners, so added a provision in there to allow if they choose to be a part of these amendments that authorize the city manager to agree and amend the agreement accordingly. So the City Council held a work session, reviewed the materials and staff presentation as well as testimony or comments from the applicant. Directed from that work session the property owner and the city staff to work on some design alternatives. Those design alternatives were developed and presented to the City Council on February 22nd, where the City Council held a public hearing and took public testimony. Upon the close of the public hearing, the City Council then made a motion and approved the amendments to the development agreement and authorizing the city manager to sign that. Tonight, the resolution is the final step in that process where you're taking the resolution will memorialize that action by City Council. So it's presented to the City Council tonight for review, and the request is that the Council makes a motion to approve the resolution attached to your packets authorizing the City Manager to sign the amended development agreement.
Can I get a motion?
Sure. Move to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into the amended development agreement and associated exhibits, and authorize the city manager to enter into identical agreements with the remaining Crossroads property owners.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve this resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into this amended development agreements with parcels as listed. Is there any discussion, Deputy Mayor?
I just have a quick question. So the exhibits that, and I'll name page numbers, but I know we don't have it on the screen. Page 45, and then the other one is page 54 on my screen. Are the pictures there just examples, but they're not what would be the actual design? What I'm asking is that the drive-through road that shows goes in, but it doesn't show how you drive out. And I just was wondering, is that just an example of what it would potentially be, or?
Yes, those photos in the Exhibit D of the development agreement, the design concepts, were created as part of the original development agreement to kind of put a picture to the text of the design guidelines. And there's several different styles of photos because the danger sometimes of a picture, if you just have one, it becomes that's exact. And so just to look at design types, concepts, and things and elements that the city is looking for within the center. And you mentioned page 54.
I said 45 and 54, and no matter what I did, it goes in, but it doesn't, the drive-through, but it doesn't go out, and that, it looks like it just kind of goes into a place where there may be
Parking lot, yeah.
Parking and stuff. And
oh, yes, and the drive-through lane would come into the site and through the parking lot and empty out to the entrance to the college. Oh, thank you, Troy. So as you look at the photo up on the screen,
Would there be arrows?
Pad G, so this would be a concept of the drive lane, would come in and meander around the edge of the plaza and into the parking lot where you'd come out to the main drive aisle that would come in and out of the site. And this particular drive lane was originally, a couple different design options. Originally, the plaza was designed to be over in this location. The concern was if you had a drive lane between the plaza and the building, then you lose any type of activity that could occur in that plaza. Right. The relationship to the building is very important.
Okay.
And so moving that drive-through lane over here, or it could be a driveway, it frames that area but keeps that plaza tied to those buildings so they can benefit from that mutual activity.
So they would drive through the parking lot to get out rather than an assigned trail.
Correct.
Out. Okay.
But right now, this is a concept design that could flow in. They come in this way, but most likely you're going to go have the windows on your driver's side of the vehicle. But if it's not a drive-through and just a drive lane, it could go either direction depending on the site design.
Okay, thank you.
And this is just all concept. Do we expect as soon as we pass this, something could come in?
I have no knowledge of anybody expecting to come in or any tenants. We've had interest in this particular parcel over the last year for medical type uses or some restaurant type uses, but nothing official. And I think part of that was the previous standards were restricted our ability to have this type of modified design. So the short answer to your question is no, there's anything I'm aware of that would come in right after you make this decision.
Okay.
Councilmember?
In going through the packet and hearing the prior presentations on this, the paragraph that jumped out at me was that in the design concept for this meandering drive here, in the appendix, it says what eventually is built actually will probably vary from the concept that we're looking at here. And my question to you, Rick, is what is the minimum standard that the staff would hold a developer to on this in order to preserve the integrity of that plaza area? I just, it was like, we're this close to approving it, and I just, for my comfort level, want to know.
I think the most important thing is the location of that drive lane and maintaining that on this side of the pedestrian space. Mm-hmm. When we talk about it could have different forms, really it's going to be driven by what that potential tenant or tenants would look like. So you could have one larger building that could be one tenant, or a larger building that could have multiple tenants with multiple faces, similar to what's out there right now. Or it could be two separate smaller buildings, depending on what's coming into the market or interest in the site and what their site design needs. But in terms of our minimum standards, we want to maintain this plaza area. We want to make sure there are provisions that this plaza area will be built at the same time whatever is built here, so you have that cohesive design and interaction of space. Then also too, could be the opportunity of having either benches or community gardens in that area. I don't know if you recall, years ago there used to be a community garden operating there. Some of the ideas they've talked about is trying to reestablish that, and that's something we've been trying to work with them on as well to reestablish that type of activity. So again, the short answer is the minimum standards having this drive lane, because that's a key feature of that, and then also make sure that plaza area is large enough to accommodate some of those type of activities.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve this resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into the amended development agreement. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have one abstention. The motion passes. Councilmember Sedman, abstain.
Abstain.
Thank you. So next up is the mayor's report, and I just have one quick report out. As it was mentioned at our last city council work session, there was the three cities, there was an ask from the three cities from members of the Community Action Council and the CIP, or it was HHSC, if those members would get together to talk about a possible ad hoc committee on homelessness and affordable housing. They met earlier this month, March 1st, and it looks like they would like to go forward and continue to meet. And their scope of work is, as an ad hoc committee, the three urban cities in Thurston County, to understand the influence and the available regional funding sources for housing and their outcomes for the home CIP, HCN, CHG, the 2160, the 2163, and CDBG funds. Consider developing a unified homelessness response plan for the three cities, and to coordinate regional policy related to affordable housing. And so our members on HHSC and Community Action Council is Councilmember Cox and Councilmember Young. And so I would move that we appoint them permanently to this ad hoc committee on homelessness and affordable housing.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
When you say permanently, is that through a normal term, in your understanding?
Yeah, so just as the rest of our ad hoc committees, they get signed basically yearly, so it'll be for the rest of the year. Can anyone from the ad hoc committee, do you know how long you guys think you're going to meet?
I think they were saying for at least a year, that we would, for the first few months, we'd meet monthly and then go to a quarterly schedule. So I think it may be a little more open-ended than that, but that was the initial vision.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And speaking about homelessness and affordable housing, I was on a conference call earlier today with the AWC and other mayors talking about homelessness and affordable housing and possible solutions and outcomes that we're looking at for cities. I talked about some of the things that we're doing in the city of Lacey, specifically around coordinated efforts like at our Lacey Veteran Services Hub, where we have all of our nonprofits working together under one roof, have a coordinated approach, and we've seen a lot of success there when it comes to veterans, and I suggested that this could be a model that we could extend to the rest of the nonprofits out there who are working on this issue. I also talked about some of the other things that we're doing in Lacey, where in the past we have waived certain hookup fees for nonprofits, and that we're looking at possibly extending that to the private sector, as long as they continue to make sure that affordable housing stays affordable in perpetuity. And I also talked about our efforts when it came, the efforts we made on accessory dwelling units, and that I think we have a lot of opportunities there as well. So it was a productive meeting. I highlighted that we need to continue to focus on our mental health services in Washington. They are sorely lacking and need more funding. I explained how difficult it is for some new hospitals to get open. We experienced that in Lacey, where there's only a certain amount of beds available in the region. And so now sometimes you get in this circumstance where you have providers fighting over who gets to provide those beds. I suggested that the state get out of that business and just leave it to the private sector to figure out how many beds are needed and what can be supported. So it was a productive meeting. We had like I said, about 20 mayors or so call in from across the state to talk to the governor, and the governor suggested that we talk again, and so the AWC will be setting up another meeting, and it looks like I'll continue to talk about the things that we're working at here in Lacey and offer our advice from this council. So that is my report.
So may I follow up a little bit with what you just said? So today was a 4-hour Thurston Thrives action team retreat kind of a thing, or preparation. And what did come up was housing again, and everyone ended up with all our action teams, and I'm on the environment and one team, and then the other one is the climate and energy efficiency action team. And it ended up centering a little bit pretty much around housing things, because it's meant to be that if we all kind of, all our focuses centered together, we would get the biggest health bang out of this whole thing. And interestingly, the issues that came up was reducing fees, doing all of the things that Lacey's already doing, actually. And when I pointed that out, I says, I'm pretty sure we're doing all of that. But Trudy Sukup with
Homes First,
Homes First, basically, will it be really good if this was across the region as well as doing what Lacey's doing, because we're doing it so well. So that was a neat thing.
Well, yeah, so my big suggestion was that the governor's office continues to work with cities and really work with the building community on what are the major impediments to building affordable housing. The public sector is not going to fix this issue.
No.
The private sector is going to build the housing necessary. So what is it going to really take for the private sector to build at least moderate to lower income? Lowest income housing, we all understand there's not probably a profit margin to be made there. So that's maybe where the public sector needs to help out. But for everything else, we're going to need the private sector's help. So they need to be at the table to see, what can we all do to work together. And I think that that suggestions hit home, and they're going to look into, bringing the building and the realtors on board for our next meeting, hopefully.
And that would be good, because if you can make those affordable homes energy efficient, they save money.
Yep.
So therefore, the cost of just living there is not something that makes them not able to even eat and stuff. So yeah.
Good. Okay, so next up is standing general committees. First up, I guess I'm trying to skip over the city manager. But
So, Honorable Mayor and City Council, just a quick update from our retreat. So, as you recall, we had 2 action items from that. One was to look at a feasibility study for an indoor sports arena. So that is now currently out. We're soliciting RFP applications to find out who would submit a proposal, to find out, one, what the demand is, what the cost would be, obviously the size, and maybe a budget to operate that. So those are due April 11th. The Parks and Recreation Department will review those, and then we'll have an ability to figure out what kind of firm would give us some answers on that. The other one is...
Can I make a side note to that? Mm-hmm. I forget what the sports hub down in Centralia is hosting a qualifier, national qualifier for Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling and all that stuff that could be in Lacey if we had that facility. Just saying.
Right. So the other is the public survey. So we are going through initial drafts. We have questions back. We're doing our final sort of review, and then we hope to get back to council. Council had indicated they'd like to see the final list before it's finalized. And so we think that'll be about mid-April sometime. So just a quick update on those items.
Great, thank you for that progress report. Next up is standing and general committees. First up is the Utilities Committee, Councilmember Young.
Okay, so the Utilities Committee met on March 5th, and this step system and grinder maintenance program was presented on. Employees from this program have a very lean crew, and they do a lot of work throughout the year, rain or shine. It's a dirty job. They oversee the operation, maintenance, and repair of about 3,200 residential step systems, 150 grinder systems, and then 56 miles of pressure step main, 20 multifamily hybrid step stations, and 133 sewer air release valves. We were really impressed with how much they're able to get done with such a lean crew in the amount of time that they have to do it. And then the city does offer instructional brochures available to the public to explain what a step system does and defining the customer and the city's responsibilities for care. There's also fog kits for customers connected to sewer about the dangers of flushing wipes, fats, oil, and grease. And then the second part of our committee meeting, we received a briefing on the lot, discharge, and industrial pretreatment regulations as it relates to craft breweries. So in 1999, lot began requiring a pretreatment permit from Fishtail Brewery. At that time, Fishtail was producing 400 barrels of beer per month. No other craft breweries have been producing as much as Fishtail. However, some of the local craft breweries are actually approaching that production level. So Lot proposed that we require a pretreatment permit, and when breweries reach 400 barrels per month, and that was approved. So that is my report.
Interesting. Do you know how many breweries are approaching that? Does anyone know?
They said 2.
Yeah. They didn't say which 2.
They didn't say.
Got it. So next up is the Community Relations Committee. Councilmember Stedman.
Thank you, Mayor. Community Relations and Public Affairs Committee met on March 5th at 11 a.m. Myself and Councilmember Young and Cox were in attendance. On the agenda was a Toast of Veterans event update. Like many people know, last year we held the Mayor's Gala that raised $35,000 to support the programs at the Lacey Veterans Service Hub. This year the city will host a Toast of Veterans event, providing an opportunity for the community to raise money and support the veterans programs at the hub. The event program will announce that the Mayor's Gala and the Toast for Veterans will be held on alternating years. The event will feature a champagne toast, a dessert, a keynote speaker, and some music. And it'll be held at the Lacey Community Center on April 28, 2018 from 6:30 to 8. A video will be played during the event showcasing veterans using the services at the hub. The city has budgeted $36,000 for this event and is reaching out for potential sponsors in the community. So if you know any, please contact the city. And the goal is to raise $16,000 for this great service to our veterans. And that is my report.
Great. I have a quick question. Do we know how many tickets are going to be available for this, or how many people the community center will hold? And are we worried about selling out or anything?
We're expecting to sell about 200 tickets. So it is definitely a bit smaller event than the gala was, but that's what we're expecting.
Do we have the names or contact for the people who bought tickets for the Mayor's Gala? Is that how we're trying to promote this, is through that?
We do. We've had a save the date out for a little while now, letting people know that it's coming. Tomorrow the invitations will be going out to those people who are on our list from last year. And then this information about how to buy tickets will be going out in our social media and on our website. With our system this year, people will also be able to make a contribution online even if they can't attend the event. So we've kind of opened up a little bit of a new avenue that way.
Do you know how much tickets will be?
$50.
$50. Great, thank you. So next up is boards, commissions, and committee reports. I'm up first. the Transportation Policy Board met when I was in Washington, D.C., and Councilmember Stedman attended that as my alternate. So if you'd like to give that report.
Yes, I would, Mayor. Give me a second here. All right. Yeah, we met while you're in DC, and they went over a countywide population and employment forecast. It was attached. Staff was providing an overview and an update of that forecast for your guys' next meeting to take action on. The first stage of that forecast was the county's employment and commute and population forecast. 2017's employment forecast was 0.08% higher than the 2012 report. This was the first stage of this forecast was employment, and the four big things of the employment were state government, education, professional services, and retail trade. Retail trade was forecast to be the lowest of the four, with 11% total, consistent from then well into the future. So that was a little bit troubling because I do retail and on my business. And then the other thing they covered was commute, the forecast on a commute. Thurston County has both strong inbound and outbound commutes. Today, we're at 35,000 outbound each day, and in 2050, it's projected to be 55,000 outbound, meaning like people driving to Seattle from here. But for the incoming, it's 25K, and in 2050, they expect that to raise to 35K coming into the city. So like say the state capital or so anywhere in the county. Other than that, the population forecast, 2015, Thurston County had a 1.97% population as compared to King County, who had an increase of 2.55% increase in population. The only other county higher than us or than King County was Snohomish at 2.01%. But some like Grays Harbor was minus 0.4%, or Pacific, which was minus 1.4%. So that's where the growth was going. And then they had a comparison between population and employment, and I didn't ask a specific question, but it was 5.6%, and I didn't really know what that meant. That question didn't come up to me until after the meeting was over and I was gone. So what the 5.6% correlation is, I'm not exactly sure, so I apologize for that. The next agenda item was the Thurston Climate Adoption Plan. This plan recommends actions to help the region prepare and adjust to climate impacts. They had 91 actions that could be taken, including updating this plan periodically. The actions range from general category actions like creating hazard recovery and prioritize. I struggle with this word a lot. Prioritizing the restoration of vital public safety facilities and essential community assets like hospitals and bridges, etc., to transportation and energy categories involving measures like expanding and retrofitting our region's energy distribution, monitoring and storage infrastructure to support more on-site renewable energy generations. Other categories in this plan were drought and water quality, food, flood and erosion, plant and animal, transportation and energy, wildfire and extreme heat. Like I said, totaling 91 different action items that could help all these things. The plan ended with an ongoing staff ended the plan presentation with the ongoing implementation and engagement of a mitigation plan that had an energy flow chart. It's all in the packet. If somebody from the public wanted to come to City Hall, I'll leave it here with the mayor. And then the next agenda item was the 2019 Unified Planning Work Program. The management program of the entire transportation system as a whole without regard to travel mode or jurisdiction is what it's about. This work plan runs on a state fiscal year basis and is required to receive federal and state funding for planning. TRPC will review this program at the April meeting and take action, which you'll be there. And the work program consists of 4 elements: program management, project programming and tracking, multi-mode transportation planning, and data collection, analysis, and forecasting. The first element is core function, providing management, funding, administration, and technology to manage and coordinate the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as the RTPO, which is Regional Transportation Planning Organization. Element 2 is the program to tracking those funds, because it's federal money. Element 3 is to ensure compliance with state and federal requirements to guarantee a continuous, cooperative, and comprehensive planning process. Element 4 requires functions to be supported by robust data collection, analysis, and forecasting activities. Some of the projects included I-5 study, corridor study, high capacity transportation alternatives analysis, Martin Way corridor study. The I-5 was $5 million, the high capacity transportation was $2.5 million, and Martin Way, the corridor study was $500,000. Those are just a few of the programs that were listed. I figured I'd mention them because a lot of those impact Lacey directly. So then the next agenda item was Journeys Regional Transportation Annual Report, including articles on resiliency when climate threatens transportation. With the piece, they had a piece on the microburst that happened. TRPC was awarded $1.7 million in regional projects, like multi-regional smart corridor, signal upgrades, streetscape enhancements in Rainier, street stabilization and rehabilitation in Tumwater, just to name a few. It even included an article about the Amtrak derailment and why there's a need for Yelm to have a traffic model study, or to have a traffic model. The last agenda item was scratched due to time. It was a long meeting, obviously. 2018's legislative session will be presented to you later in April's meeting. However, let's see here. And that's it. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that report. Next up, Deputy Mayor.
So the 2 major items that for the Olympic Clean Air Agency was and lot was held on March 14th, and I was not able to attend those because I was in Washington, D.C. The retreat was held for ORCA was held at Union, Washington, and the draft 2018 strategic plan that they worked on will be brought back to the board for discussion next month. Councilmember Cox took my place for lot. She will be reporting, even though it was minimal. And then the other thing for JASCOM, Joint Animal Services Commission, I had already reported on. However, the one thing that was reported this week to us by email was a court case. They took a person that had abused a dog, and that court case, they actually won an indictment against the person. He will actually serve time, and rather than just do community service. So they felt very positive that that was a good outcome. And that's my report.
Councilmember Young.
Okay, so the EDC meets next Monday, but I wanted to remind everyone that their annual Business Awards Gala is on April 20th at Indian Summer, and they're looking for sponsors. And then the Health and Human Services Committee met at the CIP meeting on March 12th. And at that meeting, we talked about our 2018 application review process, and we determined that we won't split up into teams to look at all the applications, but instead, every person on the board will look at every single application. And we have, I think, about 4 weeks to do that. And then we also talked about, after this year, moving towards a single application process coordinated with multiple funders, and possibly even having a funders conference. If we can't have it this year, which ideally we would have that in May, we'll look to have that in future years. But a conference where different funders in the community get together and either strategize or at least communicate on the dollars that they're giving to the different nonprofits in the area. Also at the CIP meeting, it was determined that Thurston County doesn't have all the money that they thought they were going to have to contribute to the CIP this year. They're actually a little over $6,000 short, and they said that it was because of their sales tax revenues. So the total available for RFP, instead of being $160,000, is a little bit over $154,000. And the HHSC asked if the Thurston County Commissioner could go back to the Board of Health and ask if they could find the $6,000 elsewhere so they could still contribute that amount that they had projected. And the Thurston County also acknowledged that the receipt of the letter from the 3 cities' mayors that we would like to have a seat at the table to discuss housing dollars. And so that was the CIP. And then I also need to report on Thurston Thrives. I did miss the Action Team Nexus Summit today, unfortunately, so I'm really glad that you reported on that. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. But at our meeting, the Coordinating Council's meeting on Monday, we actually had a Community Hope presentation and discussion. Dr. Chan Hellman came all the way from Oklahoma. He works for the University of Oklahoma at Tulsa, and he did an assessment called How Hopeful is Tulsa, where they actually measured the hope scores of the entire community. And John Thunheim, our prosecuting attorney, is looking to do that in Thurston County. He's calling the program Hope Thurston, and this will be a full assessment of Thurston County with wellness measures. And he's hoping to launch the survey this spring or summer with a final report by year's end. And they'll be using the model from Tulsa, and Dr. Chan Hellman will be providing technical assistance for this assessment. So it's very exciting, and I look forward to reporting more about that later.
I have a quick question on the sales tax. What do they use as projection? How are they off the 6,000? Because sales tax was up, I thought, everywhere in the county.
Yeah, it was asked, but we were told that sales tax revenues were shorter than they expected in the county.
Troy?
I can't speak for the county, but we actually contribute 0.5% of the previous year's sales tax collection. So for Lacey, it's based on actual sales tax. So, but again, I'm not really sure how or what the commitment from the county is.
So, and weren't we up? Where were we up?
We were, so I can't recall the exact amount, but you'll remember in 2016 is the first year we exceeded $10 million in sales tax. So we definitely had a good year in terms of sales tax.
I really thought all of the jurisdictions were up.
I did too. That's why it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's what we were told, and that's why we asked for them to go back and double check and see if they could.
Okay, thank you. It'd be interesting to see how that comes out. Councilmember Greenstein.
Thanks. All right, well, I have 2 reports today, but they're closely linked. So Medic One has actually formed a subcommittee to look at comprehensive planning for the long-term future of EMS and Medic One services. So we had meetings for both the main committee, and then I also sit on that subcommittee, so I'll report on both of those. Really only one major thing from the regular Medic One meeting, which met on the 21st of March, yesterday. That was a study on hospital capacity. Believe it or not, we're actually running into issues with the 2 hospitals that we have here locally diverting and not accepting patients because their emergency rooms are too full. It actually happened, and I was shocked by the number, but in January alone, Capital Medical Center went on diversion 10 days out of the 31 days in the month. That's pretty significant. So a task force is being worked on, and there's a lot of work going on between the 2 hospitals, working with EMS on at least not diverting at the same time, because we've actually had issues where both hospitals went on diversion at the same time, leaving nowhere for EMS to bring their patients locally and having to bring them to Centralia.
Wow.
So, and again, it's a capacity issue. This issue is only going to get worse. I mean, we obviously have a growing population. It's expected that we'll grow in the next 30 years by another 130,000 people in the county, with a very high percentage of that being older. As our community gets older, which uses the vast majority of emergency room and EMS services, this could become a really serious issue. So a lot of work going to go into that over the next several months, I would say. The difficulty is it goes back to something that you spoke about, Mayor, when you talked about mental health. In order to expand the size of a hospital, you have to go through that same needs process with the state. So you can't just add beds. You actually have to go through that state process to add hospital beds. So it is going to be a project and a process that'll take some time. Not to mention, of course, the cost of adding beds and all of that, but it's clear that we need more emergency room beds at this point.
Can you speak to where they diverted to?
Centralia.
Okay.
Yeah, the diversion is primarily to Centralia. If necessary, we can also divert to Pierce County hospitals, but Centralia is the primary first place for diversion. That was really the only thing of importance from the Medic 1 meeting, but I do want to talk a little bit about the Comprehensive Planning Committee. So the purpose of this subcommittee is to plan for how EMS will provide services 20 years out into the future. That's never been done by EMS, so there's not really any plan. They've done strategy planning for 3 years, 5 years, but we're now looking more at the 20-plus years, as well as how it's going to be paid for. So, again, our population's expected to grow dramatically by about 130,000 people. Currently, 12% of our population is over 65. In 20 years, it's predicted that that'll be 28% of our community. So when you take the additional 130,000 people, you're talking about 4 to 5 times the amount of seniors in our community as there are today in the next 20 years. That's going to have a huge impact on medical services in general, definitely on the fire service and EMS and how they're going to handle that. So this was only our first meeting. It was really more about throwing some ideas out on the table. The group is made up of several fire chiefs, a few fire commissioners. I'm the jurisdiction representative on there. So I'll be reporting out on this, but we intend to finish this process. Kind of the goal was set to finish it by August of next year. So it's going to be a long process, but I'll report out on it regularly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hearn.
Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meets soon, and looking forward to bringing that committee back. We meet 2 or 3 times a year. VCB, Olympia and Beyond, mainly met this week and mainly discussed their commitment to being a sports commission, recognizing that there's others in the community that are seeking that. The VCB's committed to it as well, and they have a stated history of working sports and making that a focus, and have a central committee on or a subcommittee on that. They also formalized their selection of a logo for the sports commission, their sports commission. They also went through some new planning your trip software on the website. So visit Olympia and Beyond website, and you'll see that you can plan your trip and do more things, and it should be really good for the community. Thirsting against trafficking. Again, our focus right now is this race against trafficking. So I'm going to pass out some more flyers. and ask if you'd remember that they're still seeking corporate sponsors, certainly runners. So we encourage you to spread the word amongst those in the community and help fight this scourge. That's my report.
So, Councilmember Stedman.
No report.
Councilmember Cox.
As advertised, I attended the lot meeting in Cynthia's stead this time, and it was a very short meeting. In fact, they said we set a Guinness record, but we approved a consent agenda that essentially was a couple of contracts that were very time sensitive for work on the reclaimed water lines on Martin Way. But I ended up having to chair the meeting because I was the only one physically present when it started. And from gavel to gavel, it was a 4-minute meeting, so
wow.
We don't mess around. I reported last time on Thurston Regional Planning Council, and it meets again the first Friday in April, and the Community Action Council won't meet till next week. But I did attend the work session last night for the intercity transit, and there were some interesting things that came out of that. One, I hope I'm not blowing Rick's news here, but we had a presentation from their sustainability coordinator who at the top of her presentation said, gosh, I'm sorry, but this is going to be my last presentation to the board because I've taken a job with the city of Lacey's Department of Community and Economic Development. So congratulations on a great new hire. Her name is Jessica Brandt. And
starts Monday. We're happy.
So, yay that. And she went on to report that they're investigating, but pretty sure they're going to go to a renewable R99 diesel fuel, and it has even less emissions than biodiesel does, and it doesn't require blending. Biodiesel is a really fussy fuel that requires a lot of process, and she said, I think they went to a conference in Sacramento and were told, no, it was San Francisco, and it was like, never talk to us about biodiesel again. So I guess that the industry is moving more toward that R99. They're going to have 12 propane burning vehicles for dial-a-lift, and those two have much lower emissions. One thing I particularly found interesting is that they have spill response materials now on every bus, and there's a training system for the drivers, tracking and reporting system in place. So anything from a little oil leak to a fuel spill or anything like that. We also received a presentation on fixed route buses, and we are authorizing the purchase of 14 new buses. Some will be made in 2019 and some will be made in 2020. There will be some 35-footers and some 40-footers, but that's going to be at a cost of $7.9 million. Buses aren't cheap. We spent some time on long-term service strategy as well for LOT. The LOT's 2018, Intercity Transit's 2018 budget is $112 million, and that budget is made up 85% now comes from sales tax, which was a pretty startling figure, and then the rest comes from grants, primarily from the federal government, fares, and then advertising revenue from the bus panels. And they showed us projections that showed that without more sales tax revenue, they're going to be in the red by 2023. So you will recall that the legislature has passed Senate Bill 5288, allowing for local option, where it would allow IT to go out to the public at some point and ask if they're willing to pay to have improved bus service. And so That's somewhere down the road, so to speak. I don't think that you're going to see that right away, but it is part of the long-term conversation. And then we looked at a series of what they call transformative options. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now because I think that it's going to be coming out more, but one of the ideas is, you know, a bus rapid transit service, which is a dedicated service in dense areas. It's usually employment driven, and it's faster, more comfortable, more attractive, and likely to have steady ridership on it. They're looking at improving bus shelters, perhaps with lighting and other amenities. There was a lot of discussion about rural service, and I think there was a little heartburn on the part of some board members like, wait, we can't even serve Northeast Lacey yet, so why would we go out into the county? But I think what their staff is getting at is really looking at how IT can be more supportive of rural transit by how the bus lines interface and sharing information with them. So I think that's where that's headed. And we learned that there is going to be a bus rodeo this summer, and it's going to be kind of a big one, attracting people from all counties. And instead of doing it in the airport, as they have done in the past, they're going to be doing it right on the IT property. And I think it's going to attract Grays Harbor County, Kings County, Pierce County, maybe Snohomish, Lewis County drivers, and it'll be quite an event. So you have to rope a bus. So lots of fun things happening there.
That's a big rope.
That is a big rope. That's my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, we've reached the end of our agenda. I'd just like to recognize our Vice Chair of our Planning Commissions here, Sharon. Thank you for being here tonight. We had a pretty quick meeting, and so I've been feeling under the weather, so I'm glad that we're done early. As always, you keep it classy, Lacey, and I'll call this meeting adjourned.